Yo guys, what is up? It's Teach here, coming at you again with another video over on Ark Survival Ascended, and I wanted to show you, because some people have asked me to do this, explain all of the settings inside of single player, and basically this will help explain it for the server settings as well. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that right now, and this is how to basically set your game to be whatever you want, and I'll show you, explain each individual thing and what it actually changes. Now it's going to be a longer video, so go ahead and sit down and strap in, because here we go. But if you don't mind, smash that like button, leave a comment below for the algorithm, and then consider subbing to the channel. I'm getting close to 100K, and that's been my dream all along. So in order to basically save your settings, you can go into any of your arcs, and then once you're inside of that arc by clicking on it, you can go into your settings. Mod settings will allow you to add mods into them. You do that by going into available and adding active. Yes, I said that quickly, so I apologize, but that's pretty self-explanatory. What you probably want to know are the game rules in advance, because there's a ton of different stuff and they're a little bit difficult to understand. So I'm going to tell you as quick as I can, but as accurately as I can, what these settings actually affect. So you can see that here is your player settings, and I will, by the way, I'll tell you how to do the official once I actually get to the point where I'm talking about official settings. I'll tell you how to actually set it for official. So player settings, these are basically boosts that you can give to your player. Anytime that you change any of these are going to allow you to get like more godlike or more survivor-like, if you want to think of it that way, inside of your game, increasing your damage output, whether you take damage for resistance, water drain, obviously when your water goes down, food drain. I like to set these, by the way, at like 0.5, because it's one of the most frustrating things to me in the game when you're losing those really fast. So water and food drain, setting those down a little bit can be very useful. Leaving damage and resistance, I think that's a very fair thing, because you want it to not change your experience too much. Stamina drain, it's another one of those that I like to change to about 0.5, because it's not very often that stamina is actually changing or game changing, especially in a solo player game for Ark. Now, health recovery, I like to leave that for the experience. And then harvesting damage, obviously this means that you're going to actually gain more resources. So if you're playing in solo player mode, setting that somewhere around 2.5 is a great statistic, because you want to basically be able to make it so it's not broken, but it's enough to feel the difference. Now, creature, these are very, very different things that kind of change how the world actually moves about. So you can see this right here. So max count times 1. What that means is if I set this any higher than 1, that's the density of dinosaurs that are in the game. So my max count being at 1 means that's normal. If I was to cut it in half, put 0.5, that would mean half as many dinos would spawn, and doubling it would basically increase 2x for the density of dinos in the game. Now, the rest of these pretty simple, right? So damage, the damage they do, resistance, the damage they take, food and stamina drain. I like to, again, leave these at like 0.5. Stamina drain, you can leave at 1, but that's up to you. I like to put those at like 0.5, 0.5. And this just allows us to actually change the game a little bit. Now, the one thing this will affect is food drain will affect the taming of dinos. So be aware of that. So you can put that at 1 or 0.5, depends on what you want. Health recovery, pretty self-explanatory. Harvesting damage. Now, because we cranked ours up a little bit, I like to put that at 4, because that's going to be the amount of damage they do to individual harvestable nodes. And cranking up just a little bit doesn't seem to make a big difference, but it does give you a little bit of nice off-put. Now, turret damage, this one's pretty, you can see this, the damage turrets deal to creatures. I like to leave this at 1, because it's not very often you're going to run into an issue. And if you scale this up, it does way too much damage way too quick. Like 1 pop in creatures, and you don't want that. Unless you want to play a game where you're not actually using your creatures, don't turn either of these two on for riding or taming. Now, into the actual structure, you can see this spiked walls and stuff like that. Whenever your damage output is done by a structure, so something that's meant to do damage, leave that at 1. You don't want to make it broken, because that's just, I mean, if you want to put a whole bunch of spiked walls around and put it up to like 10, basically every dino is going to just get smoked by those. Now, resistance, you can see this right now. Basically, the amount of damage that creatures are going to do to your structure is your resistance, so leave that at 1. And then cooldown repair, you can change this to whatever you want. Leaving it at 0 would disable it, basically meaning that there is no such thing as a cooldown, so you can immediately repair everything at any point in time. Can be useful. It's not really necessary, because it's not very often that you're going to use it. This is a huge one. Disable structure placement collision. Turn that on. That's going to save you so much time, because it basically allows you to place structures wherever you want, however you want to. Big game changer. Now, world. This one is a lot of explaining, so I will apologize that ahead of time. XP multiplier. This is the generic overall everything multiplier. So if I increase this and I also increase any other XP multiplier, this is going to double or triple or whatever I set this to for all of those others. Now, if you want to keep it set to official, leave it at 1. If you want to play a quicker game, but not too broken, set it to 3. 3 is about as high as you want to go, because any higher than that, you're basically going to get to level 105 almost immediately. Gaming speed multiplier. I like to set this a little bit higher. 3x is a perfect number if you want to play a game for about 2 months. It's a perfect time, and it gets everything tamed in about, usually the longest is about an hour, hour and a half. And then harvest, again, one of those things. I like to set this a little bit higher. Anything above 3 is broken, but 1x is basically going to be official settings. Now, speed leveling, leave that off because I don't like that. That's up to you. That's how you actually add levels for movement speed into players and creatures. It turns that back on. And then if you're someone that played Ark originally for flyer speed, this basically turns the flyer speed movements back on. Now, maximum difficulty will set everything to 150 regardless of whatever map you're on. That is going to be how you actually set it to official settings. Now, just so you can see, in case you are curious about this, the difficulty level, if not maximum, which is this guy here, this is essentially multiplying it by 30, right? So if my difficulty level is set to 1, you could set that to 5, and 5 would actually set it to times 30. But leaving maximum difficulty on is what we're aiming for, so we're going to go ahead and leave that off. So if you didn't want to have maximum difficulty, 5 is the difficulty level to actually get official settings. PvE mode, pretty self-explanatory. Turn it on for PvE. Hardcore, turn this on and you will hate your life because every time you die, you have to restart from 0. A limited respecs just allows you to mind wipe your character as many times as you want. And then the rules, we get a little bit different. These are more server based, by the way. These don't really affect your individual solo game as much, but they will affect your server play if you're playing servers. Third person camera, leave that on. Global voice chat, it doesn't matter. You can turn it on or off because no one actually uses chat in Ark. Enable proximity text. Yes, that's a good thing to actually have on. So you can see it's nice because it's a fun little thing to add in there. Notify player, join, left. Those are not commands you have to turn on, but you can turn them on to let you know when people add or leave. This is a huge one. That way, if you're playing on a server and an admin is actually over abusing their powers, it broadcasts to the server whenever they're doing an admin command, so everyone can see. It's kind of the great equalizer. Now, enabling crosshairs, you want that. Force no HUD. This makes the game unplayable. Do not turn that on unless you want a real challenge. It literally turns off your HUD or your HUD, and it basically makes it hard to do anything. Now, this is a big one. No survivor downloads. Turn that on. No dino downloads, items, tributes, and all of these settings are basically going to be something you want to turn on because that's going to prevent people from actually getting onto your server and cheating and basically bringing in god characters, and you don't want that. Now, non-dedicated tethering distance, you can see this right here, the scaling factor for the distance that basically the further you want to play away from somebody, the higher you want this number. So 1, you can set it to 3. I will say that it's going to be a little bit laggy. The higher you go with this number, it's going to be more laggy unless you have a really strong computer. But if you're playing non-dedicated, a higher number here will allow your players that are in your lobby to go further away from you. For a little bit of an extra challenge, I like turning this off. Enable PvP gamma. I like turning that off because I don't like gamma. It bothers me that you can just change it around, but that's up to you. Creative mode, it doesn't matter all that much. Disabling loot crates, that's going to turn off loot crates on the island. Disabling friendly fire, I like to do that because that means that your teammates are going to actually have to think about what they're doing, but you do not have to do that. Single player settings, you can see that modifies values. If you turn this off, essentially we're going to go into a official setting, whereas turning it on is going to make it a little bit faster paced if you're playing in a small or just by yourself. So that's why you want to turn that off for official settings. Now, advanced. Now, these get a little bit difficult, so it's going to take me a second to get through these. I'll go quickly because they're pretty self-explanatory. Most of these are going to be your, how do I say this? Your server-based settings. You're not going to care about this stuff too much inside of a single-player mode. I'll just kind of go into some of the key factors that you need to know. So when I'm going through this, just you can see this. Use system time. This doesn't matter. The only thing that you're going to know, prevent tribe alliances. This turning on will basically allow no alliances. Tribe war for PvP or PvE will allow people to actually go to war, whether or not it's a PvE, and then you can cancel it using that option. I like disabling gamma. Again, that's personal. You can see that. Personal opinion. I like turning that on. And then cave building, you can turn that on or off depending on whether you want to build in a cave. Now, disable structure decay, you can turn this on or off. I like turning it on, but that's up to you, because if you're playing solo player, you probably don't want your stuff going away if you don't stay inside of render distance. And then disable dino decay, same concept, right? Flyer carry, you want that on. Extra structure prevention volumes, you basically want to leave this off, but that's up to you. If you turn it on, it's going to prevent people from going into, on the island specifically, the only map that it works for is the island. Anywhere that's got a high concentration of resources, it's going to prevent you from building in that area. Kind of sucks, in all honesty, because all the best areas to build are in those zones. These three you want to leave off because they're all self-explanatory. And then just so you can see right here, these are all pretty generic settings as well. We're not going to focus on the PvP settings. I'll do that in another server-based video, but that's not super important. Now, the next ones that you really want to focus on are world. We'll move into player, but it doesn't matter all that much. XP multipliers, and then miscellaneous. So advanced world, day night speeds, leave these on 1 unless you genuinely want to change the length of night or length of day. Putting it 0.5 means that it's going to actually so it's like the length of each day compared to night. If you think about it, basically if you lower this number, the length of the day is going to be longer. That's difficult to understand, but that's kind of what it is. But then you can see that all of this other stuff, pretty self-explanatory. Spoiling time, if you increase this, it's going to, but now that spoiling isn't really a big issue, I wouldn't worry about that. This can be super useful. You can see that the scaling factor for how long dropped items remain in the world, increasing this to like a 2, basically allows you to have more time. Same thing with corpse decomposition to get your bag should you die. Now, these, not a huge issue, but where you want to change a few of the things are your crop growth and crop decay. Put this up to like a 10 and then leave decay on 1 because you want your stuff to grow pretty quickly, pretty huge. And then harvest health, if you increase this to like a 2 or a 3, basically you're going to allow your character to get more resources in game. Now, respawn interval, this is how long it takes for things to spawn back in. Usually it's about 30 minutes, give or take. But if you cut this down to like 0.01, for example, it's going to instantaneously spawn things back in. A good number on a solo player is like 0.5 because you're probably not running the server when you're not playing. So 0.5 is a pretty good setting. Mating interval, you can see lower numbers mate and mate more often. So having this as 1 is official, but putting it at like 0.5 is going to allow them to breed more often. Same thing with lay egg interval. You can see this higher numbers, less time between egg spawns. And then egg hatch. If this is cranked up as high as you can, it's going to instantaneously crack eggs, but 1 is official settings. Now, again, these are numbers that are kind of up to you to change them. Baby mature speed is a number that you can use in order to actually increase the time that a baby, it basically makes it friendly for you the higher number you go. So if you multiply it by 5, it grows 5 times faster. And then same thing here. They will eat more if you increase this number. Now, the cuddle interval. Lower numbers basically mean that you have to cuddle with it less. So 0.1 is a huge one because you'll get more imprinting bonus from it. And then the cuddle grace period, basically delaying the cuddling a baby creature before imprinting so it doesn't actually cause a stat decrease. So you want to leave this at like 0.01. Baby cuddle lose imprint speed. Again, lower that quite a bit. Baby imprint stat scale 1 is very important. Basically, it allows you to increase the amount of stats that a baby can get. If you want to have more powerful dinos, set it up to like a 2 or a 3. Don't go too high with it because it'll just mean that your numbers are catastrophically way too high. Now, wild dino, these are pretty, you don't want to touch these in any way, shape, or form. That's up to you. Tame dino, I don't like touching any of the tame dino stuff, but you can basically boost the individual stats of your dinos if you wanted to edit anything. Anything higher than 1 is good. Anything lower than 1 is lower settings. Same thing with your player character. Anything higher than 1 is good. Anything lower than 1, not good. These are all just boosts. XP multipliers, and then miscellaneous XP multipliers. Again, these are all pretty self-explanatory. 1x is official, and if you change any of these numbers outside of that, that's essentially going to increase the amount per node. So 2x would be 2 times, 3x being 3 times, or 0.5 for half. Now miscellaneous, this is the last group, I swear. So what I like to do is I like to set the supply crate loot quality on 1, but increase this to like 5 or 6 for fishing loot. And that's basically going to give you increased loot, but you have to fish in order to get it instead of just flying around the map. I enjoy fishing, so that's why I set it there. And then fuel consumption, it's basically the rate at which fuel is consumed. 0.01 would make it almost non-existent, and 5 is much, much faster. Structure platform limit, you can increase this to like a 5, so you can make a massive base on top of a creature. You can even go as high as something like 10x, and that's totally just fine. I like to turn on showing floating damage text because it allows you to get those green numbers, which are super cool. And then the only other thing really here that I like to change, just so you can see it right here, is the actual recipes. I like to make my custom recipe effectiveness go up to like 10 because I want to make it worthwhile. And then skill factor, I'll set this to like a 2. But that allows you to have some pretty good custom recipes, especially in a solo player game. So anyways, that is all the important stats that have been explained. Hopefully this helps you out. I will try and do a different server one where I can talk about server things and how they affect the individual statistics, but this is single player solo tribe kind of thing, settings explained. So hopefully this helps you out. If you don't mind, smash that like button, leave a comment below for the algorithm, and then consider subbing to the channel. All right, Teach out.